Okay, great. So just to kind of begin, I've tried to have a kind of brief look at the work that is kind of ongoing around the DHIS2 integration, and really supportive of trying to move forward with something that can kind of be the go-to solution out the box. I think it would be fantastic, and I think there's kind of room to grow it, and possibly also I think what would be nice is also just to look at the possibility of tracker, the tracker as well, and see how much how that would fit in and how that would differ from kind of what's being done at the moment. So Jembi's kind of history with DHIS2 is initially, so we've got the we've got two modules that we've worked with around DHIS2. There's the DHIS connector module, which is kind of the foundation of the whole thing, which really I think provides some similar functionality to what the kind of DHIS reporting module does, and essentially just provides a mapping between your OpenMRS reports and your DHIS2 data elements or kind of category combos, etc. So there is a dependency on the reporting module, and it's really just defining your period indicator reports and mapping those to your data elements. And then on top of that, there's a user interface to kind of define those and kind of drag and drop GUI to do the mappings. So selecting your indicators, your OpenMRS reports, and then you basically you're able to kind of pull down or the set of data elements, etc. from DHIS2, and then drag and drop how you want to do the mappings, as well as kind of additional things like periods and things like that on top of it. So the history of that is it was kind of initially built, I think, for Mozambique use case. It used to support DXF. Well, it still does, I think, support DXF. And then it was updated, I think, early 2017 to support ADX. So there is some kind of legacy DXF stuff in there. And you can still kind of export or download as DXF, but it really was designed, updated to kind of try and support ADX. But the last time it was updated was March 2017, so it hasn't been updated to reflect any of the kind of the 2.1 revisions, or that kind of move towards Fire-based ADX. So that is something very interested in, and I'd love to get your kind of understanding of where ADX is in terms of the ADX v2, because from what I understand, they've been looking at the Fire questionnaire resource, but I'm not sure if that is what they're moving forwards with. But definitely, if we're in full support of Fire and trying to move things towards that. So there's the OpenMRS connector module, and then the other module that kind of is not required but kind of builds on top of that is just our DHIS reporting module, which essentially just pre-packages a whole bunch of PEPFAR indicators and reports, and kind of builds off of the drag and drop, so you can add additional ones or edit the existing ones, but it's really just a kind of out the box data set selection of indicators. So it doesn't add a whole lot of functionality, just saves time on kind of implementing those reports from scratch. So it's really the DHIS connector module that kind of has the value. And essentially within it, there's two key services. The first is your get data from DHIS endpoint, which allows you to actually query the DHIS endpoint, pull the results as JSON, and then store those, so you're able to store your information around your indicators and data elements, etc. in OpenMRS. and then there's a corresponding kind of post data to your DHIS endpoint, which takes in, you can specify the actual endpoint, your JSON payload, and then there's just an additional Boolean option to say whether you're using ADX or DXF, and then post that to DHIS2. So the recent kind of updates around it was just through some work we did with some training with ICAP in Lesotho. There was a kind of request to add automated reporting, or really just to take it, because they have these kind of monthly reports that need to be run, and it was really kind of looking at how it could switch from having to do that manually to kind of configure a scheduler that actually automates running the report and posting that data in the background. Again, based on a kind of data set period of like daily, monthly, or yearly. So that's been the most recent updates to the module. But apart from that, there hasn't been a lot of activity on it, but there has been interest from a couple groups, and we do support it, but we know that things can be done better, and that there's kind of room for improvement. So I think just looking at if there is anything that could be leveraged, it's really, I'm just going to post in the notes, sorry. So it's might be this baseline kind of ADX objects, and then just the kind of, again, the baseline for your DHIS objects. But I presume that there's a similar set of classes in the existing module, so I'm not sure if there is much that kind of can be reused from that. The other thing that, so just posting a couple more snippets, how the mapping is actually done. So essentially, we store what we call a DHIS mapping, which just consists of a name, so it has to have a unique name. And that allows us to kind of have some form of identifier for these, a period type, who was created by, and then basically your mappings for your data set UID, and then your period indicator report GUID, and then the elements within that. So it's fairly straightforward. There's not much magic in there, but it has, I think there are some kind of implementations that have found it useful. The last thing I just want to mention before kind of getting into actual discussion is just some of the work that we've done around the tracker. So we haven't actually had a use case. Well, there might be one upcoming, but we haven't faced a specific project or use case where OpenMRS is looking to push tracker data into DHIS. But we have had that use case for other kind of EMR type or mobile type clients. The kind of main one that we have faced is with the Mom Connect project here in South Africa, which is just a kind of mobile registration application for kind of pregnant mothers to register and get information on that. And that really pushes it into this national kind of DHIS2 instance as these registration events or cases within Tracker. So what we do use is, I'll just post a link to it in the notes, is what we've built is this DHIS2 Tracker populator. Again, isn't based on any existing module on the left, but is very much kind of essentially what it does is pushes like CSV, transforms CSV files and then pushes those into DHIS Tracker. And then there's a bit more, so we generally kind of build this in with our OpenHIM, and then we'll have one or two other mediators within the OpenHIM, the validator and orchestrator, that also kind of validates some of the information from this. So, for instance, the org unit, the org unit code or org unit ID, it'll actually kind of check that does exist before it pushes this in. And then some of the additional things that the orchestrator would manage is just actually enrolling a case, possibly then kind of closing a program stage, completing the program. So some of that additional functionality that isn't just pushing kind of case data, but managing the actual kind of stages of that tracker program. So I don't.
Just to clarify, your DHIS tracker is really one taking CSV.
Correct. Yeah. So I mean, what we actually do with so we designed it to be able to be used for bulk import, as well as real time. So single case. So when we use it for the single case, essentially the mediators will then take in JSON or whatever it comes in from that side, transform it into like a single line CSV, and then try and push that up. So it's we kind of tried to cover our bases there for what it can be used for, which I think has been useful for us, because even at the moment we've got a project where we need to kind of migrate 20,000 malaria cases. So we're using this to migrate the legacy data, and then we've also got an OpenHIM setup where going forward, real-time cases are then pushed through the OpenHIM, and then using the DHIS populator to do it in real time. Yeah, so that's kind of my spiel. But again, be great to kind of get a bit more kind of understanding of where you are with the DHIS kind of reporting module, and particularly kind of around the approach of where kind of the ADX v2, from what I understand, is kind of in progress, but has it been kind of finalized, or is it possible to actually start pushing that in, or is it too soon?
So the ADX standard has been finalized, and they have a sample right now, but it's not in DHIS2 yet. But what we were trying to understand was, for the current DHIS2 reporting module, we have to almost restructure the whole model. It has been set up with to incorporate ADX. So when you say the current one is supporting ADX, can you mention how it is supporting ADX, and how it is storing the mappings of ADX and reporting, to give us a better idea of how things are being done?
Sure thing. So that first there that links to the ADX folder in the module. It's in the notes.
Mm-hmm.
So this is really kind of how we're representing ADX, and what what we actually store for that. So I'm not sure if you have kind of had a look through the code base in the past. But yeah, when we did start developing it, it was we've based it on I think it's still kind of the current link in the DHIS2 docs, that chapter 1.18. At the bottom of the notes, I posted the link where kind of showing the schema that we base things off of.
Welcome to OpenMRS. Write code, save lives.
This conference is being recorded by the organizer.
Apologies, I muted the two sources from where we were getting the resonance.
I'm just trying to, so I'm going through the, yes, I think you're right. So I think there is some, we do try and actually kind of pull in that more complex and actually get it into that format. But I'm just trying to find, sorry, there was a snippet that clarified that, but I can't find it at this moment. But yeah, it does look like it's a similar process, just essentially using the possibly an older version.
Okay, that would be great. Actually, it would be wonderful. So, in the sense that it was maybe using an earlier version of ADX import that looked something similar to this, and uh, using that, updating that code would make much more sense to support. So, so for mapping, you're storing it in a JSON file with those fields. Is that right?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. So while generating the final, so are you storing the final data value template somewhere, or are they computed each time?
It does store them. So you're able to also yeah, so it does actually store them as a file on the file system, and you can actually export and kind of import those mappings. So you can actually generate that. So if you are then kind of you want to get your mappings and then launch another implementation and reuse those, there is actually capability to export them as a file, to basically pull down that file and then also upload those mappings as a file.
Mm-hmm.
There is some reuse provided there.
Okay. Question: do you have a demo or a working system somewhere?
Yeah, so I've been trying to set that up as a public one, but just ran out of time before this. So the closest thing I can offer now is just Koisi's screen recording, that YouTube video. But what I can do is, yeah, unfortunately, sorry, I did run out of time, but I can get that up and running and send through a link to it in the next kind of day, probably. Just to give you a better idea.
Okay.
Is there a shift to FIRE at this point? Are they planning to use that questionnaire resource for this, or is it staying as is for now?
As far as I know, it is staying as is, or it has been updated with more metadata in this XML itself, but I'm not sure they are moving towards ADX, oh, sorry, FIRE anytime soon.
Okay.
So, so to understand where exactly those are stored and how they are imported, would it be better to have a follow-up call or a follow-up email?
I think so. Yeah, I think if I can get it up and running, send that through to you so you can actually have a look at it and understand a bit better how that works. And then I can follow up on email or a call if that's more useful, just to answer those questions of the exact how.
So, so if it already supports that, then it would make sense to use this and try to get this support the SQL part. But yeah, those are my thoughts.
Okay. Yeah, I think that also helps. If there is an area that you think there is some potential to kind of pull out or reuse some of the stuff, can definitely prioritize getting that answered.
So Burke or Wycliffe or Darius, do you have any questions or comments? Apparently not. Okay.
Hello.
Yep.
Moya, I know earlier you did say that you didn't think the work done at Jembi addressed the new ADX profile. How do you feel about that now?
So if ADX is supported by Jembi and maybe not just the latest revision, it would be much easier to upgrade the module to the latest revision, as I think it adds metadata and we need a way to uh, make sure it is conforming to the new metadata addition rather than creating the whole model to support the
But I thought once you change the format, that affects the output and what you store. All that has to be redone. That's what I would imagine.
So what we are looking at the current DHIS to report module is a shift from DXF to ADX. It never supported ADX import. Uh, so that is the reason we are modifying the whole model to support ADX. Uh, so when Jembi says that it is supporting ADX, I'm assuming they already have a process of taking in data elements and the data disaggregation somehow and creating the final outputs. So it might need to have a little more work done on integrating the disaggregations or understanding the codeless part of it. But it should have the other framework already set in, is what I'm believing.
And are you looking to move completely away from DXF or still support that for kind of existing implementations that might be using it?
In so what I heard or what I've understood by James and Bob, who are leading the ADX and who are kind of the point of contacts I have from DHIS2, mentioned that DHIS2 stopped support for DXF, as in there was a import XML they used to provide for EMRs to take in that has been stopped a while back, and they are completely going towards ADX. I'm not sure if anyone is using ADX in a, so it shouldn't be affecting the EMR systems, uh, but I'm not sure of any existing implementation.
Yeah, because we had to make the same thing of when we added the ADX support. We made the decision to leave DXF in there because at that time, it wasn't unknown, but it seems like, and you're kind of supporting that at this point you could probably kind of drop it completely from a module. We're definitely not any site that is actually using this isn't using it for DXF. We don't, if we had to redo it again now, we'd probably just move completely away from the DXF.
Yeah, that makes sense. So Burke or Wycliffe, do you have any more questions or concerns?
Yeah, and I think it would, I think our usual approach is to kind of put the complexity and as much logic into the kind of the HIM and the surrounding HIE components, so that it's kind of reusable across EMRs. It doesn't matter what system's on at the bottom, but I think it would be valuable to kind of look at how you would kind of get that information out of OpenMRS, particularly because it's not just kind of aggregate data. There's all that additional program stages and there's how that would kind of be mapped, or if it's even possible to build a kind of GUI, a similar kind of mapping GUI where you're able to map potentially programs and events and things like that to the different tracker elements. I'm not sure if there has kind of been an initial design or anything done around that. Yeah, and quite a bit more kind of transforming data into correct format and mapping to option sets and things like that. But yeah, I mean, I guess it's still it is still kind of part of DHIS integration, but could almost see that sitting as a separate module or a completely separate piece of work. I'm not sure, because it is kind of a new approach, I guess. You'd want to kind of reuse things like not having to store your DHIS2 instance server details or something twice, but it's kind of seems like you could do it independently of the aggregate reporting. Yeah. There is, if you're looking at kind of building in rules and things like that you don't necessarily want built in. But yeah, I mean, I think there's definitely an increasing need. I think it's really, really an important kind of thing to try and get the aggregate, an out-the-box solution for that. And I'd say, next step after that, there's definitely interest from our side in kind of getting data out of OpenMRS and pushing that into Tracker. So it'd be great to be involved in that as well, if that kind of moves forward.
So Moria, I remember we did a review of what the delta is from the model in the current DHIS2 module to where we want to be. Those tables that you said were existing, were those based on the DXF format? Is that what you're saying?
Yes. So the first, the one we have currently is based on DXF, and the one we want to get to is something supporting ADX. So Daniel, just to give you a reference, I'm still.
Well, I get that, I guess. So you're saying the delta between the ADX format that Jembi is currently using is very small compared to where we want to be, right?
Yeah.
Okay. And you strongly feel that it's better to adopt what they have in their module.
Yep. So if they are already supporting the I still want to look at how they are supporting it, but if they are supporting taking in individual pieces and generating the final uh, output for the ADX, then it would make sense to use their uh, module.
So what's the name of the module again?
DHIS connector.
Connect.
It's available, I think, and Daniel put it in the notes, but this is the link.
I guess I also try to test it and see how it works.
Mm-hmm. So just as a reference, Daniel, so DXF provides you with the final data value template, and we need to get the disaggregation and data element. Whereas ADX provides you with data element and disaggregation, disaggregation and their options, and we need to generate the final data value template.
So Daniel, this is a question for you. Is it possible to submit this data, or I guess what I'm trying to get is there a way you can basically use this module without reporting, or is tied to reporting?
I'm not sure I understand. Could you say that again?
I know that you say there's a way you can, link your indicators to reports, right? Well, basically your data elements to indicators in reporting. There's a way you can link those. And I'm asking, is it an option or it's a must?
It's a must. I mean, there has to be a mapping between something. So it's at that level, but it's on the DHIS side, you can link an indicator to. You don't have to just link it to a data element. You could link it to other entities or objects in DHIS2. But from the OpenMRS side, with the dependency on the reporting module, it really is kind of based around the period indicator reports. So it is linking to the indicators in those. Again, it's more. It was built that way because that kind of covered the use case that was needed for that. So it wasn't designed to kind of try and make it strict. It's just that's the only way that it supports it, if that makes sense.
Okay. So more than in your design, I think you had an option to specify a SQL query. Does that mean we have to just forego that functionality?
Yeah, we might have to incorporate that functionality. So, Daniel, have you seen a disaggregated report being generated, and what pieces of reporting module do you use?
That I'm not too sure. I'd have to get back around that. So yeah, I can't recall offhand the exact kind of mapping between the reporting module to the DHIS2 connector module.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
But I can add that to the list of questions.
Okay. So just to loop back, Wycliffe, yes, we have to create the SQL functionality, but as far as I'm understanding, they do store the final DHIS, sorry, data value template. So it would be a matter of adding something called annotation or field like that in the JSON, and we should be able to provide a UI for users to enter that. And we could possibly copy that functionality from the existing module into this module.
Saying that we don't have to use the module that is DHIS2 connector. Instead, we have to copy stuff from there to DHIS2 module.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to actually ask that question. I think, you know, with the way that the module was built, and I think it might actually be more valuable to actually kind of copy stuff out of that module and put it into the new module. Otherwise, you know, leveraging it, as I said, it was kind of built for one or two use cases, but it is limited. And with the kind of history of actually mapping to DXF before, there's, you know, probably quite a bit of stuff in there that isn't kind of relevant anymore. But I'm not sure which approach you were kind of thinking of.
In my opinion, either should be fine, but if we want to completely not have any reference, in the current module, we were thinking of not having any reference to DXF anyway. So yeah, it makes sense. Either should be fine. Okay, so if we don't have any other questions or concerns, we should be following up with Daniel on the questions we have, and try to go from there. If we need to have a call, we should be having a call, but we need to follow up on the questions to make sure we get the understanding of design.
Great. I've noted those down, and yeah, as I say, I'll try and get back to you on those as soon as I can.
Great, awesome. Really appreciate your time, Daniel, for taking the time and explaining how things are being done and what use cases it is supporting, and it was really helpful.
Oh, cool. Thanks.
Yep,
And yeah,
thank you.
keep up the good work. Really looking forward to the outcome of what you're working on. Thanks.
Awesome. Thanks, everyone. Have a good one. And bye.